Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trin. The one show, the only show that shows you the path to a healthier life, one conversation at a time. Or in today's case, maybe one book at a time. Fill us in, Dr. Trin. Who'd you bring back again here?
All right. Hey, guys. Excited to bring back Dr. Ade, as we lovingly know him, who is both a physician and a minister and an author. And I wanted to take a deep dive into his latest book called The House That Prayer Built. And it's very interesting because in Health Talks, we talk about health all the time. We talk about physical health, mental health. But today we're going to look a little bit about spiritual health from the spiritual side. And I think it's good to have a whole person view at health. And so I think it's appropriate and awesome to bring in a physician who's also a leader in the world of spiritual health and an author as well. And chat about more about his book and maybe just his life in general. How did a doctor come over to the side of ministry and all that? But yeah, welcome, Dr. Ade.
It's a joy and a pleasure, Dr. Trin. I appreciate the opportunity to be back. Always good to see you again, and just to be back to have a chat with you. And it's awesome to be here. Thank you.
So remind us your story. I know you were here about a year ago, but tell us your tale.
Yeah. So my tale in a nutshell, I am, if I remember, we had a chuckle about this, Paul, talking about starting out my life. I grew up in Nigeria, and I was one of those early starters. I started school early and became a medical doctor very young. At 20, joked about being a Doogie Howser,
yes,
guy. And so, I just had a very accelerated, educational experience. So I became a physician at the tender age of 20, and I was on fast track to life in the world of medicine with great ambition and looking to, rise to the pinnacle of, in the field of medicine. But I had an epiphany, so to say, sometime during my, my career. It started with relocating to the U.S. from Nigeria, obviously to pursue specialization in medicine, and I was on track to do that. Took my board exams and got engaged in a hospital for residency. But during that time, also coincidentally, I was growing in my relationship with the Lord. I'd been a Christian, but then I got exposed to a deeper relationship with God that translated into, what I would call, getting a revelation of God's purpose for my life. And that came in the form of words spoken, but also, for instance, we're talking about spirituality, visions granted to where I began to see the purpose of God for my life, which took me away from the field of medicine into ministry, specifically into missions. There was a cry and a desire in my heart to just reach out to the nations, that there were so many people across the world that didn't even know that there was life, in Christ Jesus, didn't know about Jesus. Funny story, I've been in places in this God's green earth where when I got there and I began to talk to them about Jesus, they said, who is he? Is he a politician?
Yeah.
Is he going to improve our lot?
Right.
And so they had actually never heard the name Jesus.
Tell him he's a social influencer.
There we go.
He's a TikToker. Yeah,
that's right. And so that began my journey into ministry, into serving people all over the world, and that's what it's been, just a life of service.
So, do you still practice medicine, or are you a full-time minister?
I'm a full-time minister. Funny you should ask that, Paul, because when that call came, what we call the call to ministry, I wanted to be bivocational, to combine that with medicine, but under some specific circumstances, the Lord let me know that no, the trajectory He had for me was a little different. That He wanted me to hang up, we used to say in those days, hang up my stethoscope, that He had a different path for me to pursue.
That's a pretty hard phone call to get from the man up above here. Hello, I know you worked your butt off and you went through med school and you did all this, but no, that's not what we need you right now here. It's like, I spent my life doing this. I'm at the peak of my career, just beginning it, and you want me to quit? That can't be something you just went, okay.
Yeah, well, you're right, Paul, and that's actually so true, because those were my exact words. I'm like, Lord, I've invested the better part of my whole life getting to this point. Now it's about to get good, really good.
Right.
And then this is coming. So it's something I struggled with for, I would say, for almost a year. I was wrestling with that. And I was receiving counsel from, my colleagues. Some were saying, no, you can't do this. This is crazy. This is unreal. In fact, when I told my mother about my decision to quit, she said, you know what? I know you're completely gone crazy. You are totally mad.
Yeah.
And she stopped speaking to me for almost close to 8 months. She refused. She said, no, this is too much.
Yeah.
But what helped me along was, and since you brought it up, was there's a story in the Bible about a man called Moses. And Moses
he's another social influencer, right? Isn't he on TikTok, Dr. Trent? Or maybe he's on Instagram. I think that's where he is.
So Moses was raised up, to be a great leader, like, in Egypt. He was raised up in Pharaoh's house. He was political, and, it was a monarch, so to say. But then the Bible says that when the time came and his call came, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, but chose rather to follow what God said. So he left behind the treasures and the power and the influence of Egypt to embrace the call of God on his life. So that was actually something that encouraged me in making that decision. But you're right, it was a very difficult decision to make.
Yeah.
But it's not a one I have not regretted for a single day.
And so now, do you have a church or a ministry, or how do you support yourself? Where do you put your efforts these days?
Yeah, my primary calling was into missionary work, which, is a different animal, so to say. So it's more of an apostolic calling.
Yeah, there's no congregation behind you. There's no
exactly.
Right.
There's no congregation behind me, but we have partnerships. So what happens is, churches and individuals partner with us in carrying out the purpose that God has for us. So, but you brought up a very valid point. Without being a pastor or having a church that is kind of behind you, so to say, it's a different type of ministry.
Yeah.
Sometimes puts you, reminds me of the Apostle Paul, sometimes puts you in a place where you have seasons of, the way the call is real is when you are in those seasons of things are not so easy, both naturally speaking and even financially speaking, but that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Because that's when it's easy to quit. Oh, this isn't working anymore here.
Exactly. And so that's why, when God called, he called in a very specific way. And when I'm tempted, and I have to tell you that those times that I was tempted to say, man, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I quit.
This is it. But then I remember that it was so vivid. I think God did it that way so that when those times come, you think back and like, you know, the story, I always go back to the scriptures, the story of Paul. He had such a remarkable encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. And at every point when he felt like quitting, he could not forget. He could never forget that.
Yeah, knocked him off his horse. That's a pretty dramatic
exactly.
phone call. He didn't just tap him on the shoulder. He knocked him off his horse.
Knocked him off and blinded him for a few days.
Yeah. All right, so Dr. Trinh, let's bring you back into this thing here. I am amazed. I'm going to ask both of you, but I'll start with Dr. Trinh. Science and religion are supposed to be opposite ends of the spectrum. One is fact, one is faith. One is what you can prove, and one is things you can't prove, but you deeply believe. I don't see medicine, usually most doctors, as being deep. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're atheists, but I don't think of most doctors as coming from a spiritual tradition. They're all about, even if they do believe personally, it's about the facts. It's what you can prove. It's what you can't prove. You're a scientist at heart here. How do you reconcile science and faith? How do you reconcile those two together here?
Yeah, it's really simple. If you believe that there is a creator of this universe, creator of man, creator of the earth and the stars, science is just a process of discovering that creation.
Right.
Yeah.
and that's what originally, when you go back to the Galileos of the world and all that kind of stuff, they weren't out challenging the church, even though they were held. There was only one church then, my church, the Catholic Church, but they were, attacked and said, you're disproving things. You're looking at the stars and they're not perfect. The moon isn't perfect. It has to be perfect. That's a celestial body here. We think everything that's closer to God, that has to be perfect. You can't tell me that you can see pockmarks on the face of the moon. You can't. And so they were criticized for revealing things, but their intent was not to prove this is fake. Their intent was to uncover what they thought was the secret of God's creation. They didn't see it. Now, through the years, probably because they were attacked by the church and by others, they stopped seeing. The general assumption is that science and religion are at odds. What do you think? Do I call you doctor? You're still a doctor. I got to call you doctor forever.
Yeah, I still am. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's the result of generations of targeted divorcing of science and the church. Like Dr. Trinh said, right. Science is just a discovery of what the creator has made. And no matter how much scientists discover, it only brings them to a realization of closer and closer. It's been proven that even the further they go in discovery, the more they get closer to realizing, man, there has to be a creator behind this.
Right. It's too intricate. It's to be just happenstance. It's hard to believe that all of this incredibly complex structure, this isn't a random thing. There has to be some, that's the way I view it. I mean, you can certainly come to another conclusion, but the more they discover, the more complex, the more completely, what do we say? There's a design to all this stuff here. It seems hard to believe that the bang happened and all of this pattern just emerged like a beautiful crystal structure on its own. It's hard to believe that for me, but
it's hard to believe, and it's also hard to recreate, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Right. We can't just push a button and say, let's try this again. Let's blow things up and see if they randomly associate into a perfect pattern here.
Right.
So, all right. So you don't see a conflict between the two, but many do. What do you say to people who say, no, I live in one world or the other. I either live in a world of belief and it's a blind belief. Don't tell me the truth. I just believe what I believe and don't show me the facts, or no, show me the facts. And if you can't prove it, I don't believe it. We seem to have gone into these two extreme positions here. What do you tell people on either side? I'll start with you, Doctor. Yeah.
Yes. So what I'll tell people is the same thing. One once again, I'll borrow from the scriptures. The Apostle Paul went to a place in Greece called Mars Hill that was full of, philosophers and, that didn't really believe. They believed in philosophy. And they had a shrine to the unknown God.
Really? Okay.
And so the unknown God, at least they left something. They knew that there was a God that their mind and their philosophies didn't understand.
They had a placeholder for something.
They had a placeholder for something that was, at least they did that.
Right.
So what I would say to people that are like, oh, it's science, you show me the facts. What I would say to them sincerely is, you just stay, keep an open mind and keep digging and keep seeking. Because the longer you seek with an open heart and an open mind, you will encounter that unknown God who in his mercy will reveal the truth to you. It's not something you can convince someone of. You don't address or approach it from the standpoint of trying to change their mind, because it's very difficult to do that. It's going to be something that's revealed to their heart. And that's just how wonderful and merciful God is, for a person who will keep an open heart, open mind, and keep seeking.
So I'll bring it back to medicine again here. Dr. Trin has brought on some people like Etna, is it Etna? Or Etna, a nurse. Does she have a doctorate in nursing? I forgot, but she's a nurse, and she tries to combine spiritual healing with medical healing, meaning that there are moments in crisis. You've got cancer, somebody's dying, something horrible is happening, and the doctors have a tendency to at that moment to pull out of the room and go, okay, I've done all I can. See ya. Good luck. Sorry. And they don't know how to reach into another toolbox. They don't know how to help people at that moment. I've helped your body all I can, but I failed. And it ain't going to happen. And at that moment, do you pray with them? Do you offer some consolation? Do you do something? And that seems just mind-blowing to me. Talk about that, Dr. Trin, those moments where medicine has done all it can, and now you switch to a spiritual toolbox.
Absolutely. There's been good research, actually, that's been published showing that those who are spiritual, whatever faith that may be, if you support their spirituality and use that faith as a support for their overall health, you get better outcomes as well. Those who are believers in their faith, right? If they're interested and they want, let's say, prayer in the doctor's office, right? Praying for patients, for those who want prayer, then there's good data, good information showing that it supports their overall health in general.
Because what does it do? It taps into something else. A mind,
taps into healing.
Yeah,
it taps into healing. It taps, not necessarily healing like, God's going to cure my cancer immediately type, but it taps into all aspects of healing, emotional, mental, and just in general, those who have faith tend to, and it's been published, tend to do better health-wise, because I believe that the lack of faith sometimes puts us into a mental health crisis when we are in the health crisis itself.
Right. Nowhere to turn. What do I do? I'm lost.
I do. Yeah. Absolutely. And having that faith in, having that faith in your creator allows you to know that there's a higher purpose.
But Dr. Ade, can you imagine, have you seen doctors at a moment of crisis when the toolbox is empty? I've tried everything I can. I've never had a doctor pray with me. Now, I've never asked a doctor to pray with me. I've never seen a doctor pray. When that moment comes, they leave, and in comes the spiritual advisor, the priest, the rabbi, the whatever, imam. Yeah. Somebody comes in at that moment to take over. I've done what I can. Let's bring in the spiritual Bring him in, ladies and gentlemen, our spiritual advisor, Dr. Ade, because I'm done. I'm out of here. I did everything I could.
Yeah. That's why, we appreciate people like Dr. Trin, and there are several others that I know personally that are rooted in their faith to the point where, but they're also professional enough to do the job they need to do professionally. But at the background of that, not at the end of it, at the background of that is their faith. They're praying, they're asking for, and faith also works in the way sometimes it works together is a doctor that's praying, he can tap into wisdom that is beyond what he knows, that enables him to do more than he thought he could do.
Right.
That's one aspect. The other aspect, which we can never deny, is there is the supernatural. God is supernatural. God is beyond the realm or the scope of the natural. And so when the natural is exhausted, unfortunately for many, that's when they turn to the supernatural.
Right.
But we need to learn to let them coexist from the get-go.
Yeah.
Not that's my last resort after everything else has failed.
Right.
But there is a supernatural, and there is a reality that God does heal, that God does do things that man cannot do.
I believe. I'm a cradle-to-grave Catholic, I guess. I was born in the faith, and I've never looked outside the faith. It's been a comfort to me. I haven't always accepted it. I don't always believe it. I struggle with it at times. It's not an easy journey, but I've stuck with it. I still go to church every week, and I still find comfort and solace and belief. Because to me, I'll go one step beyond. It's the intersection between faith and science. Faith picks up where science ends. Science can only explain so much. We know that. We're still trying to figure out, particularly in things like the quantum world. Well, it doesn't even make any sense. How can things be in two places at once? But that's what quantum mechanics is based on, that theory. And it's only when you open the box, what is it, Schrodinger's cat or whatever, and you open the box and look at it, and then it establishes itself in one position. That's just, come on, that's just bizarre. That doesn't make any sense. There's lots of examples of that as you get into the quantum world that just do not make sense. So how do you make sense of something that doesn't make sense? Or what do you believe when I've run out of answers? Faith to me is something that you hold on to that I can't prove it anymore, but I've tapped into it enough to know there's something else there. Maybe I'm just convincing myself. Maybe it's just positive thinking. Maybe it's all fake. I don't know. We won't know till it's all over. But for me, it seems real, and it seems obvious that science has only peeled back so much of the onion, and the onion is pretty clearly put together somehow in a very specific way by somebody, something, somehow. It seems hard to believe that it's just all that random. So to me, there is a connection between the two. But for most of the world, we've disconnected it. And talk about this, both of you. And maybe we'll start with Dr. Ade, because you're out there in ministering to people. People have lost their faith in ways I never thought possible. America, for example, was once generally seen as a very whatever your faith was, and it was mostly Christianity here in America. And there are lots of versions. Christianity splintered into lots of things from the original one church that I still adhere to here. But generally, most people said this is a Christian nation. We are a nation of Christians. Maybe that's a better way to put it, with less politically charged. Most people are Christians in the country, or most people have a faith. But Pew, that's been tracking religious things for 50, 60 years, a couple of years ago reported the shocking news that less than half of Americans identify with any faith. It doesn't mean they don't believe in God completely, but I don't believe in that religion stuff anymore. I don't go anywhere. I'm not affiliated with anything. Less than half of Americans have any fixed religious belief or any religious association. And that continues to decline and go down and down. And Europe's the same way. We seem to be losing our faith everywhere. What do you think? I'll start with Dr. Trin, maybe. We'll flip it here. Why is everybody losing their faith?
Yeah, I sometimes don't necessarily blame folks. I think what we've lost is our faith in institutional religion.
Yeah, clearly.
And sometimes you watch TV and you see the TV televangelists and you watch these popular folks on TV rise and then crash because of some scandal that's occurred.
Certainly lots of scandal within my church, the Catholic Church, and the sex abuse scandals. Certainly lots of these ministers turn out to be frauds or turn out to be con men or whatever here. And so it's just like our politicians, just like our police, just like we seem to have lost faith in all institutions, including institutional religion.
But really the point is these are just people, right? They're just as sinful as the next person. They just happen to be on TV.
Right.
And so faith to me personally is just a relationship. It's just my relationship with God, as opposed to my relationship with an institution or a denomination I never grew up, I didn't grow up a Christian. I grew up Buddhist. And so I was never taught any particular denomination. I didn't grow up in a particular, Baptist,
faith
Catholic
tradition, as they say.
Yeah, I didn't have a faith tradition. So my faith has always been a relationship with my Creator. But I think what we're seeing is that loss of faith in man-made institutional setups that is designed at some point to fail, because we're all sinners and we all fail at some point. And that's kind of the distinction I see.
But why can't we separate, for example, and I get your criticism, and the Catholic Church has certainly suffered because of this. The institutional failures are mammoth, covering up massive sex abuse and all this stuff here. Although I don't know what they were thinking, the recruiting poster says, come work with young boys and never get married. And who are they going to attract to fill that job role? Certain people say that sounds appealing to me. Anyway, so I get that. But when the people fail, why do we lose faith in the institution? Why can't we separate two? Because if I believed the same thing, then I wouldn't be an American anymore, because America has certainly failed in many dramatic instances, war, problems, politicians, whatever. I could lose faith in government as well. I could lose faith in police. I'm not going to call the police anymore. They're all corrupt. They're all phony. They're all something here. But you trust, somehow you believe that the institution is greater than its failures. You without institutions, it's organized chaos. And I think that's where we're at spiritually. It's organized chaos. What do you think, Dr. Ade, here?
Yes, and I completely agree with the preceding, explanations, especially when Dr. Friend referenced that it's understanding that, faith is not about, what the institution. It originates from a personal relationship, and to kind of segue into the reason, actually, what you brought up was one of the reasons for writing this book.
Okay, good.
Why are people losing their faith?
I was trying to find a way to come back to the book here, so you did. You tied it together. Good. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it back to the book. Don't worry.
All right,
good. So why are people losing their faith? Because this was an issue that was bothering me as a minister. Because when you progressively, you just saw a decline in participation in organized, like the institutional, faith. And not all institutional faith is bad, but what I found out was there was a loss of connection between the individual and the person in whom their faith is. For one, if your faith is in the institution, then obviously if there's institutional failure, you're going to kind of say, oh, forget about this. But if your faith is in a person, or in people in general. And that's the distinction. You said, okay, there's a lot of institutional failure in America and politics. Why do I just not give up completely on everything of being in America? It's because there's still a measure of engagement and interaction with those other institutions, because we sense that even though they're bad, they're not all bad, and we still kind of need them.
I think we do need some kind of institutional structure. Maybe not as much as, maybe it's a pendulum. You know, we swing. It's very structured and no room for individual belief, and you just follow the program. And then it's the hippie days that I grew up in. Hey, whatever feel good, do good. You know, it's you're on your own. Well, you make it up. Cafeteria Catholics. We pick and choose what we believe and all this stuff here. I think there's some balance, some middle ground. Same thing with government. Is it just a libertarian fantasy? We all just do what we want to do, and other than obeying traffic lights or something, everybody does anything they want to do. No, if we're going to live together, it has to be some organization. There got to be some structure to this. Otherwise, it is chaos. We're constantly clashing with each other here.
That's right. And God did intend for us to live together. That is why the institutional aspect of faith is still important, because it was instituted by God, back to what you said, to cause us to live together. It's to have community. And so the institutional aspect is still necessary because we need community as a support to our faith. But back to what I was saying from the book, right. The loss of contact with the Creator, which is where prayer comes in.
Right.
When you begin,
because even Catholics, we don't pray to the Pope, we pray to God. You know, it's not, you don't pray to the institution. Please help me. You might call up the institution to say I need a little help. But your prayer is to a higher power here, right?
That's right. That's right. So when you engage with the Creator, with God in prayer, it has a way of sustaining. It opens you up to the reality of who God is, in spite of the failures in the institution
and failures of people,
of the people. So it keeps you connected. But if you now disconnect, if there's a disconnect in that aspect of prayer, and we know, I mean, it's not strange that, over the years, prayer was kind of systematically eliminated from different spheres of life.
Yeah, well, Americans, we are, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, trying to separate church and state. Whose church is it? It always comes down to, if you're going to combine church and state, then which church are you picking? And let's not pick any, because we're such a diverse country. Let's avoid the 400 years of 5 centuries of religious fighting here. Let's just see if we can separate the two. But then that means that it's up to us to insert faith into these other things. The institution of government isn't forcing kids to pray before the class starts. And so it's up to us to be a self-starter and to, you can still go pray. There are still campuses that do that. You can have a prayer group in the morning or after school or whatever. I mean, it doesn't ban prayer. It just says we're not going to be leading the prayer.
It kind of does in reality.
Maybe in effect, yeah. I mean, there's certainly people that argue that it does, that I can't express my faith anymore. Yeah,
exactly. You can't express your faith. So if it goes back to we, the individual, championing that, not the institution, then there should be that measure of liberty. But I know for a fact, because I have my ears to the ground about these things, especially when it comes to prayer, that the government or the authorities actually frown at you expressing yourself. Now, it's the individual expressing themselves or expressing their faith.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that they're not doing it. They're not allowing you to do it because, it may not go down well with somebody else. It's not what we support. So,
and it's a fine line, so we probably err on the side of let's just ban it all. Because if a teacher starts talking about the Bible in class, is he or she advocating that for the students? Is he just expressing his own opinion? Or he's the leader of the class? Is he therefore trying to lead you in a direction? I get it. We're always trying to, let's just stay away from government officials, everybody. Let's not start going down there. But in so doing, maybe we don't allow people the expression that they would have in every other life to state their opinion. This is what I believe. This is what I see. This is another aspect you should be aware of here. It's a touchy subject, but it is definitely one, whatever it is, we've lost our faith. What do you think, Dr. Trent? Or have we, is that just lost faith in institutions? Like you said, are we still just as religious underneath? We're just not buying that old-time religion anymore.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about folks saying, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Yeah, right.
Right. And that's a sense, that's a trend that I've seen. And that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm curious what that means, but I can somewhat relate to it as well.
And in that structure, I seek something, but I'm not buying the program you've been selling me, this church, that church, any church. In that structure, then, we are constantly seeking for answers on our own. And here's my struggle as a modern American. I have to do this everything. I'm going to give you a really silly example, but I think it proves the point. Years ago, when my phone went out, when we had a phone in the house and the phone went out, I called the phone company and they fixed it. Number of years ago, many years ago, my phone, when I still had a phone in the house, it went out. I called AT&T. They said, we don't come out and fix them anymore. You fix it. I fix it. What do I know about fixing a phone? Well, go to Home Depot, go online, go to our self-help desk, and you can do all this stuff. And I ended up mildly shocking myself because I forgot that there's power in the phone cable and to connect the little bell that rang, and I couldn't get the coating off, and I put it in my mouth to yank it off, and the minute I did, my hair lit up. Now, it was a low voltage. I didn't kill myself, but oh my God, it hurt like hell. And I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I pumping my own gas? Why am I fixing all these things constantly? Why am I running my own financial plans through a robot? Why am I doing all this stuff? I used to trust somebody to do it for me, and now I don't trust anybody. I got to be in charge of my own health. I got to be in charge of my finances. I got to be in charge of my house. I got to fix my car. I got to do everything. So in that world, I'm not sure we're equipped to do it all, and we don't trust any spiritual advisors anymore. They're corrupt. They're wrong. They're bad. I'm going to figure it out myself. I got the internet. Enough time, I can come up with the answers. Am I overreacting? But that's my frustration. So is there no place for a spiritual advisor anymore, Dr. Ade? Is there no place for the priest, the minister, the somebody, the who's better knowledge than I am to guide me, or do I have to all do it myself?
You're not completely wrong, Paul. There is a place for that, and there will always be a place for that, because the part of what God put together was he put leaders. He said he has put leaders in the church to help, to help the believers, to help the people in the faith. So God is a responsible, if you look at it even relationally, God is a responsible father. He's our father. He's not just going to leave us to try and figure everything out ourselves and try and handle it. We're going to make a mess of it.
If I went to the Himalayas and tried to climb top of Mount Everest, I would never make it alone. I need a guide.
That's right. So we need guides. He's given us a guide in the Holy Spirit, but he also gives us guides in people that he puts in our lives to be guides. Now, people have become jaded because some of those people that God has to use people.
Right.
So some of those people...
And the people are failing everywhere I'm looking. Everybody,
exactly.
Every expert in the world. I don't trust scientists. I don't trust Dr. Fauci. I do, but so many didn't trust Dr. Fauci, this cute little guy, because somehow he had an agenda or he had a role in this. We don't trust anybody.
Nobody. Yeah, which is completely wrong. And I think it's not right to become so jaded that we don't trust anybody and we have to take everything into our own hands. We're not equipped. We're not designed to live like that. Yeah. And
I can't figure it all out. I can't know how to do everything well.
Basically, we almost become a god unto ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
So that kind of feeds into, okay, if I can do all this myself, then why do I even need God?
Yeah.
I can handle all this. And we may not say it out loud, but that's exactly where it ends up leading.
I
Because
completely agree.
there's
That's a
no
good way to
faith.
put it.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's just my thought
So
about
we're
that.
all on our own, and if we believe that and we embrace that, then at some point we don't need anybody. Maybe we don't need God. We don't need our neighbors. We don't need institutions. You know, no man is an island. I'm an island unto myself. I work for myself. I tackle everything. So again, I know it's a pendulum. I know you got to be involved in your healthcare. I know you got to be involved in your financial decisions. Maybe too often we just trusted somebody else to do that. But now it's gone to the other end of the pendulum where I don't trust anybody. What do you think, Dr. Trin? Do we trust anybody? I don't trust my doctors. I don't go see my doctors very often, only when I'm desperate.
Yeah, I don't even trust myself.
So there you go. There's the real problem. When you can't even trust yourself, now where do you go? Now you're really in trouble. Yeah.
Tell us more, Dr. Ade, about your book. What's the premise of this book about prayer?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah. So the premise of the book, and I started alluding to it earlier, is this: we are not, like Paul was saying just now, we are not supposed to figure everything out ourselves. We are actually our lives, our families, whatever it is that's happening on the earth, the Creator wants to be involved in it. So our lives are being built up daily, day by day. You start as a child, you're building something, making something of your life. You want to get married, make something of your family, make something of your career. So we're in a building process always. And so in the process of building, you need the involvement of the architect of everything. If you're in a natural building, you draw plans before the building starts. So likewise for us as individuals, as people, there were plans drawn out for our lives before we got started. And so it is reconciled. So now you're going to build according to the plans which were made to the specifications of the owner of the house. If I'm going to build a house for myself, I know where I want the rooms. I know where I want everything to be. I communicate that to an architect who draws out a plan, and the builders build according to that plan. So it's like without prayer, we're trying to build without communication with the one who has the plan. And so it's just a haphazard, and many times people's lives are so haphazard. They don't really know what's going on. Oh. They don't know. Let me try this for a while. Then, oh man, it's not working.
Minute to minute. We live in the now.
Yeah. And, they're building this and all of a sudden it just comes crumbling down. And instead of people's lives being built up, these days, things are breaking down all around us.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can trace it back to this loss of connection and engagement with the Creator. And so this book presents prayer. The other premise or purpose of this was to demystify prayer. Prayer sometimes can be seen very mystical, like something that many people, I can't do that, that's beyond what I can do. I'm not that spiritual. But it presents prayer as just having a conversation, a heartfelt, like an engaging conversation, like we've been having just now, talking to each other, listening to each other.
So are we praying right now?
Yeah, well, no, because you're not God.
But does it look like this? Is God come out as a guest on our podcast and we question him, we talk with him?
It looks exactly like this. It's having a conversation with God, and the emphasis there on conversation, because prayer is not a one-way street to where you're talking to God. You just dump all your requests and dump it all on God and just say, okay, that's it, amen, and you're off. You miss a very valuable part of prayer, which is receiving the feedback from God.
And I'll be vulnerable here for a moment. I was taught as a Catholic, I wasn't taught this explicitly, but that's the message I got, that prayer is it's a coin that you drop into the slot machine. And I say 3 Hail Marys and 4 Our Fathers, and something happens. And if it doesn't happen, then go back and put some more coins in the slot machine. But it's a slot machine. You go through the process, you pull the thing, and hopefully you hit the jackpot. And it's a one-way communication. I don't know if I know how to pray any other way, because when there was a famous scene in a Paul Newman movie where what was the name of the film? It's a famous film, and he's on the chain gang, and he escapes 20 times and finally gets away, and he breaks into a church, and he goes, "Really? I'm in a church. They're chasing me. They're going to shoot me. They're going to kill me if they catch me this time here." And he says, "Okay, I haven't been here very often, old man. Is anybody there? What should I do right now? I'm coming to you." And then it's dead silence, and he says, "That's what I thought." And I don't hear a response. I have to say, I'm as religious as I try and be, as spiritual as I try and be, I still see it as a one-way. My experience has been a one-way communication. It's been very little. I don't get a message. I don't get I don't get something in the middle of the night. I don't get a vision. I don't hear anybody. How do you have a conversation with somebody that doesn't?
Let me ask you a question, Paul.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where, you were doing something or experiencing something, and it was almost like, I kind of knew this was going to happen. It's almost like I've been here before.
Oh, sure.
I've heard this before. I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of us have had that.
Right.
Guess what that is? That's not just something plucked out of thin air. It's not, it's communication beyond the natural that came to you and gave you information inside that you were even unaware of until you became conscious on the outside. And so the question I have for you, Paul, is this. You say you don't necessarily, are you expecting to
hear something? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I was brought up in a tradition, at least in a repetitive view of prayer. Please, God, do this and do this and do this, and let me put some more coins in. Let me be faithful, like in the Bible. All the Jews that were questioning Jesus, the Pharisees and stuff here. It was all about the process. If I did the process faithfully, good things would happen. It wasn't.
Well, this book presents it about the person, even though there's a process to it. But it's a person. It's an engaging conversation. So the challenge I issue to people is this: is posture yourself such that you actually expect to hear something, and that's also in the book. Maintain an attitude of watchfulness after you pray.
You're making me think here. I hate this. I hate thinking this early in the morning. Right.
You just might be surprised that when you start looking for it, it's finally like God saying, "Oh, finally, I can get a word across." Yeah. Finally, I can actually get something across to this guy because he's
listening.
Listening and actually not just listening, but expecting to hear something. You just might be surprised, Paul. Maybe next time I come on the show, you tell me, that was
worth the price of admission today here. Okay. I like that theory because no, I don't know. I hope for an answer. I hope for a result. That's why I go through the process, and I try and, for me, it is trying to be faithful to even when I don't see any results or whatever it's trying, because part of me needs to believe, part of me wants to believe, part of me logically believes. There's got to be something more to this. And
we do a lot of speaking, but we don't do a lot of listening.
There you go, Paul.
Yeah. And sometimes we expect, our Creator God to answer in a particular way with our expectations.
Right.
And sometimes the answer doesn't come that way because a Creator knows best.
Right.
Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is wait. I can share you a real quick story about prayer. Back in medical school, was I was doing rotations at the hospital as a medical student, and I was also involved with a church Bible study on Friday nights. And I remember on a Friday night, when we were doing Bible study at church. When it came to the time, for prayer, everyone submits their prayer requests, right? What's your prayer request? So my prayer request was for a patient that I saw that day at the hospital. And I was saying, she's really nice and just wanted to pray, for you. And it was around 10 p.m., I think, that night, right before we were done with Bible study. And I would like to ask for her healing, right? That God heals her. Because I saw her that day and I saw her a few days, and I grown attached to this patient in the hospital. So the group prayed for her healing on a Friday night. So the next day on Saturday, I came back to the hospital as a medical student to do my rounds. And when I came to her room, I found out that she died.
Yeah, right.
And
I could see where this is going. Wait a minute. I prayed for her. She died.
That's right. I found out that she died. And so I was really shocked. So I came to the nursing station and asked the nurses, what happened? My patient died. I was really shocked and I was really sad. And so I asked the nurse, when did she die? And they were like, oh, she died last night around 10 p.m.
Wow.
Maybe the answer is not what we expect.
Yeah.
Maybe it's God's answer to healing and not our answer to healing, right?
Wow.
Right. So it's like, wow, he did answer this prayer, but it's his definition or God's definition of healing versus mine.
Well, I want to be there when that smart little Doogie Howser started reaching out in prayer to God, saying, help me to use this healing gift you've given me, to take it to others, to take it farther, to go as far as I can. And he said, no, I want you to do something else. That's great that you did this. It's like, you armed me with this incredible skill, this talent. I worked my butt off to get here, and you want me to drop it? That's nuts. Yeah, I must not have been hearing it. Wait, let me clear my ears here again. I want to be.
And there's a lot in relating with God that is nuts. If you've done any reading in the scriptures, you see that there's a lot that is nuts, but it's only nuts because in our limited natural way of thinking and projecting, we see only so little in the grand scheme of things and in the grand scope of God's eternal plan. Our lives fits in not the way we in our limited thinking have thought it will fit in. If you really yield to God, you see that your life actually fits in, and everything that you've been through that you think is a waste is actually not a waste. It's actually still going to be useful in some context, maybe not the context in which you had painted for yourself.
Right. Abraham waits his whole life. He's an old man. He finally gets the son he's been waiting for, and God says, kill him.
Kill him. Isn't that nuts?
Are you nuts? No. But he faithfully goes up and says, okay,
that's
not
right.
what I want to do, but here we go.
That's right.
Now, fortunately, God pulled the plug on that one and said, all right, you really have to kill him. But,
that's right.
But,
I guess it's expectations, isn't it? We have our expectations of how God should act or react, when in actuality, it may not fit, his expectations or what his plans are, what God's plans are. And it's interesting because we often put God in a box.
And it's very difficult for me, an American, an entrepreneur, a man, to surrender control. I'm in total control of my life. I got this. Stand back. That's what I've been taught to believe and taught to do. America. That's go to America. The male macho. I can do it. It's the entrepreneur who can make it everything. And that whole notion of let go and let God, as Carrie Underwood's song says, Jesus, take the wheel. No. Nobody's taking the wheel. That's nuts.
Yeah.
And yet, the few times I sort of really let go, the things happened, and I was like, that's really hard to do for me.
That's it right there, Paul. The few times you actually really let go, it's amazing those are actually what I call watershed moments. It's actually times when something really happens.
And I'll give you an example. I mean, I've quoted this one before. I'll try and do it quickly because we're running out of time here. But I didn't have any children late in life. Like Abraham said, I want a child. And so the only course was to adopt. We're good Irish Catholics. We're at Mass. They're talking about all these kids that don't. I said, that's it. That's the answer. And so after a lot of prayer and push, we're going to adopt at whatever I was, late 40s, 50, something like that. And so we start the process, and I'm going to do this logically. I'm going to look at all the alternatives. I'm going to go to every adoption fair. I'm going to make lists. I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to push our. Went to Catholic Charities, find somebody. I push for a year. You tell me there's a million kids that need adoption. Why can't I find one? I got nowhere, and it finally quit and said, I give up. I guess this isn't going to happen. And that's when it happened. Somebody came into our life. Hey, we think we found somebody. And very quickly it all came together when I quit looking, when I quit trying to control the process.
That's right. You said it very well, Paul, and that's just what it is. And that's what this book kind of challenges people to do, is to quit trying to be the one that's controlling everything.
Yeah.
And trust in a God who is actually in control of everything. And if you will let him, he can actually surprise you. He'll actually boggle your mind. And what you've been struggling to do and trying to get and all that, it just happens without you kind of killing yourself or doing it the way you thought it should be done.
Show us the book. We want to see it on the screen.
Actually, if you can see this, I have it right here.
Oh,
the house that prayer built.
It's called The House That Prayer Built. It's available on Amazon. The House That Prayer Built, Dr. Ade Adebanjo. Also, all online retailers, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold, you can get it. My publisher is Book Baby. I self-published through a company called Book Baby. You can also get it from them, especially if you're ordering in bulk. It actually may be easier to order from them. It's bookbaby.com. Bookbaby is one word, BOOKbaby.com. If you reach out to them on their bookstore, the book's available. But if you want bulk purchase, reach out to them. They'll mail it right to you. The House That Prayer Built.
Well, that's the book, baby, that we need to see these days here. It's a well-apt title. It's hard to build a house if you don't have access to the builder. And you're saying use prayer to build the house, and maybe you'll get a better structure, a better result. Is there a website or anything else? Can they hear you talk anywhere? Where are you at these? I don't even know where are you at right now? Are you in America? Are you in Southern California?
I'm in America right now. I'm in Katy, Texas right now.
Katy, Texas.
Yes.
Katy, right.
Just outside of Houston. And we have a weekly program called AmbassAdé Live, where we teach God's word. Sometimes we teach from the book, but we just teach people. It's live on Instagram and on Facebook, and also on our YouTube channel.
Teachers, what are those? I don't trust teachers anymore.
Teachers are those guys that get inside your ears.
Yeah, you got it inside my head today here. I'm gonna have to think about this. Do I expect an answer? Okay.
And so you can find us on this social media. I don't know if I can show them, but if you just type the name Ade Adebanjo on
how would I type that? I can't even spell it. How do we spell it?
It's not something actually babe, what's the best way to get this across? I'll send something to you, Paul, with these details.
Okay, good. I'll give you my email when we get offline. You can send me something. We'll put it in the notes. And but spell it out, because Dr. Trin has a robot transcribing this too. So it's spell your name.
So the name is Ade.
Right.
Let me start with our YouTube page. It's Ade, ADE, and Busola, Busola, Adebanjo, Adebanjo. that's our YouTube channel. If you go there, there's plenty of resources, teachings, and, that just will answer so many questions. On Instagram, it's at Rev Doc Ade. Catch that? Reverend Dr. Ade. So it's at REVDOCADE.
I can remember that. That's easier than all the
REVDOCADE. That's Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's my full name, which is more interesting. It's ADEGBENGA. And then last name is ADEBANJO. If you just type that, you see me on Facebook. And so you can reach out to us any of these ways. I'll send you more information to put in the notes, Paul.
Yeah. Well, the robot.
I found you on YouTube.
There it is.
There you go.
There he is on YouTube. Yeah. Got some good videos.
Well, it must be real because somehow we still trust YouTube. I don't know why. It's on YouTube. I believe it.
Awesome.
All right, take us out, Dr. Trin. What a fascinating discussion here. And darn if he didn't get me thinking this morning. I hate that.
That's what I like to do.
Take us out, Dr. Trin.
Thank you for coming on, Dr. Ade. And we'll do this again. A valuable conversation outside of just prescribing meds and taking care of the physical body, the value of taking care of our spiritual health. And great discussion on both science and faith. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Trin. And Paul, it's great to see you again. I love what you do. And, I pray that, you continue to reach more people with this valuable resource.
Well, hang on don't hang up, and we'll get your info online. We'll make sure we put that in here too if the robot didn't pick it up here. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Well, there you have it. If that wasn't an interesting discussion, I don't know what is. Makes you think. And that's the whole purpose. Health Talks with Dr. Trin. Share it with somebody. Tell somebody about what you heard today. And maybe I just think something might happen here if we all start talking more and thinking about this. Starting with these weekly conversations here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.